The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, heated blankets, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and probably not role-playing games. Today, Duke Abby joins Alex to review Azul Queen's Garden from Next Move Games. Then the Dukes take a look back at their review of Ginkgopolis in their Dukes Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 274, which we're calling Barkitect. Barkitect. That's right. Not an architect. Not a bark. Just a Barkitect. I don't know what that means. Well, I do know what it means. So we're talking about two games. We're talking about Azul Queen's Garden. I was going to say Queen's Gambit. That's not the thing. And then we're talking about Ginkgopolis in our double take. Both of them have to do with trees. That's the bark. And then there's some city building in Ginkgopolis. Is there city building in Queen's Garden?
Garden building.
Garden building. Okay, so you can be an architect of a garden, I think.
You have pavilions. I'm sure they're garden architects.
Okay.
Has to be a thing.
So fantastic name by BJ from Board Game Gumbo. Fantastic. Only thing that would have made it better is if somehow we were talking about a dog-themed game this week, or a game with a dog in it. If it were like a Dead of Winter. What's the dog in Dead of Winter? There's like the stunt dog or something.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the name.
And then that way we could have gotten the double meaning on Barkitect. But no, great job. We actually get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild. That's guild number 2008. In fact, we've got some runners up for naming the episode that we'll provide to you at the end of the episode. Well, Alex, it's been tell everybody what you're doing right now. How exactly are you recording right now?
Well, if the audio sounds different, which it's possible it won't, I am recording this not very far from where I typically record this. Usually I'm in my home office, which is adjacent to the bedroom, set up at my desk, sitting like a professional would. This is a situation where I am coming to you live from bed, and it was a kind of a long-running joke that we would record the podcast with no pants. Sean, I will disclose to you that despite the fact that I am wearing a shirt, not wearing any pants. So
good for you.
Yeah, no, what happened was I woke up this morning and I genuinely have no idea. I don't know if this is just a function of getting older or something that happened during hockey on Thursday that just took a while to kick in. But basically my back left lower ribs, it feels sort of like a muscle cramp. Feels sort of like, I don't know, whatever it was really painful and still is. I've taken some ibuprofen, but yeah, I'm propped up in bed. I'm have a whole bunch of pillows behind me. I've got the microphone wedged between my left arm and a pillow that's holding it up. So doing what I can, Sean, to make this recording happen, but unusual circumstances to say the least.
Yeah, well, I'll say that you're a trooper, and I too am a trooper, because I got to tell you, Alex, I'm not going to have any new plays to talk about. I'm going to talk briefly about the new Magic set, but these last 2 weeks have been rough. So not last Saturday, the 2 weeks ago Saturday, after we recorded the podcast, I went up on my roof to switch over our swamp cooler. We have swamp coolers here in New Mexico. They're typically on the roof, and you have to switch it over for the summer, shut it down for the winter, climb up a ladder, the same ladder I've used for years and years and years. No problem. Come down great. Cannot find my earbuds. I was listening to a Warhammer 40K audiobook while I was doing that, and Raquel says, maybe you left your earbuds up on the roof. And so I'm like, good idea. I'll go check. So I go up, they're not there. Oh, bummer. And then as I start to come about to come down, the ladder shifted slightly. And I'm like, ooh, okay, let me fix that. By the way, no one's holding the ladder for me because I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. And I've always done that. I've always like climbed the ladder, very rarely have someone hold it because again, I'm stupid. And so I readjust the ladder, no problem. And I'm like, wow, that'd be terrible if I fell. So then I get, then I did you not see this?
I don't think so.
You didn't see this on Facebook? I feel like you didn't know about this?
No.
Oh my goodness. I thought
Let me look this up now. Hang on.
So I put one foot on the top rung or second to top rung of the ladder, no problem. I put my second foot on and I'm like, great. And then I take 1 foot down, one more ladder rung down, and the thing slips out from under me. So I'm at roof height. And I think it's all kind of a blur, but based on the injuries I've received, first I sort of like slid down rungs of the ladder on my shins and knee. And I have, on Facebook, you can see my legs are pretty banged up. I've got this really gnarly bruise on like the left side of my left knee. I land on at the time I thought it was my back, but I landed on my butt. My butt is a trooper, Alex. Speaking of troopers, I land on my butt. I thought I landed on my back, but I think what actually happened is my reflexes were like, protect your head at all costs. I never hit my head. And so like I jerked up so that it was just my butt that landed on the now fallen ladder. I crawled in the house. Raquel was in the garage. I yelled for Chewy. I'm like, Chewy, get mama. I fell off the roof. And Raquel's like, you better not be kidding. And I'm like, I'm really not. Yeah. Do you see the pictures?
So this is indicative of social media, perhaps, but I absolutely must have seen the pictures.
Yes.
Because I clicked the care reaction.
Yes, that's what I thought.
But I don't think I resonated or read or processed in any way. I just sort of was like, oh, that sucks. And then completely forgot it had happened to you. And last remember just seeing some carne asada that you had smoked in your post that came after it.
Yeah.
Had completely not resonated, clicked, whatever that had happened. I'm sorry it did. I'm glad I reacted with a care reaction, but man.
When you can't actually care as a human being, Facebook's there to do it for you.
That's right. All you got to do is click the care button. Press F to pay respects.
So yeah, oh my God, my butt was bruised. I bruised my tailbone. And surprisingly, I've bruised my tailbone worse before, which is pretty surprising. My back though is still jacked up. My back hurt so bad. And again, at first I thought I must have landed on it, but it wasn't sensitive to the touch, so it wasn't like bruised. It was just the worst back strain of my life because I was just like doing everything I could to protect my head. I went into the doctor. Oh, I was basically laid up for 3 days. Like it was just almost impossible to move and just incredibly painful. I went to the doctors 2 days later. Everyone's mad at me because I didn't go right away, which again, stupid. And then they x-rayed me. They're like, yeah, you came out pretty lucky, which yeah, I did come out pretty lucky. So my tailbone is still bruised 2 weeks later. My back is still hurting, although I am much, much better. It took about 4 days for me to gain like noticeable results, like feeling better. And then it's gotten better. Like I'm like 90% right now, 95% probably. So that's good. And then the following Friday, at the office, I received a very credible death threat. I'm not going to say much more about that. So yeah, like very credible death threat. So yeah, that was fun. And then Chewy. So now, as of Tuesday this week, Chewy has been incredibly sick. She's gone to urgent care twice. That's how sick and in pain. She has something on her left side, kind of like you were describing to me earlier. I don't think you described it for the podcast. But like at first we're like, oh, she's got appendicitis, but no, it's on the wrong side. And then we're like, well, maybe it's like a kidney infection or something. They've done urinalysis tests. They've tested for COVID. They've tested for the flu. They've tested for strep. They did blood work, which we're waiting to get the results of the blood work back because she went yesterday. But like, she has never been more miserable. It's just like you were talking about last episode. You're just like, I would do anything to take that pain away from you, even fall off the roof again. Oof. But yeah, so it's been a rough 2 weeks over here, Alex. Oh, speaking of, so I did manage as a trooper to edit the podcast on Sunday after I fell off the roof. It was the most painful edit of my life. No, that's not true. The most painful edit of my life was the Boards Alive edit, because that took like 24 hours. No, it was painful. It was also one of the quicker edits because I'm just like, nope, we're getting this out. And I was sitting up in my chair at my desk, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? I should be laying down right now.
Dedication.
Yep. So yeah, it's been a rough 2 weeks. I'm hoping the next 2 weeks are much better. I will report in, and hopefully my luck has changed.
Luckily, you haven't posted anything about the death threat that I clicked care on Facebook, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, I told you very briefly by text about my own brush with justice in the judicial system. Not to belabor non-board game talk any longer, but I was picked to be on a jury, not this past week, but the week before, called in on Monday. This was after it had been canceled twice during COVID, and then the last time I was supposed to be called, I said, hey, I'm about to be a dad, and the call date was ultimately 2 days before Ruby was born. So got extended until April, but got to go in some point. And I not only got picked to be part of the pool of 42 for this criminal case, but was one of the 12 jurors that would have deliberated had this case gotten that far. It's a long story, but basically felony assault and burglary. Prosecution had a very, very weak case, and ultimately, after the prosecution rested, they pled down from felony assault and burglary to misdemeanor trespassing. So, what I thought was my favorite thing was not just the food they gave us, which was actually better than you would expect, but they had along the door in between the jury room and the courtroom, it said there was like a doorbell type of button, and it said, press 1 if you have a question, press twice if you have a verdict. And I thought that was just that it was a doorbell was funny. And I guess, I don't know, there are other ways you could notify through a bailiff or through a note or whatever else. I just found it amusing that it was a doorbell system for that. Yeah. Anyway, so that was my court experience. And games, I guess. I will tell you, Sean. You mentioned being scant on new plays. I'm scant on new physical plays. I'm going to be talking about apps for my section. So,
all right,
this is already going to be off to a buck wild start. So, Sean, you want to talk about Magic?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, we had a Duke's Dice Wednesday night. Remember, they're bi-weekly now, or every other week. And that we had one the Wednesday after my fall. So, of course, I didn't go. And then the next Wednesday, it was an off Duke's night. Our Coin/18xx crew, we were going to play Liberty or Death, the Revolutionary War coin game. And I was super excited. My copy was unpunched. So I got it down, I punched it, I organized it. I read the rules the night before to make sure I had everything down. Cool, got it. And then then getting ready to go, and about an hour and a half before, that's when Raquel called me and said, hey, I'm taking Chewy to urgent care. And it looked like appendicitis at that point. And I was just like, even though it's the wrong side. And I was like, okay, canceled that. So that was a bummer. But I have been able to draft on Magic Arena a ton of the new Magic set. Streets of New Capenna, which is really interesting. It's still Magic, it's still fantasy, but they're on a plane where it's sort of an Art Deco 1920s gangster world, but with magic, fantastical elements. Basically, there are these 5 crime families that are run by demons. They got rid of it was a world created by angels, but then the crime families came in and snuffed out all the angels. And they're using a concept of shards, for lack of a better word. So in magic, you have the color pie, right? There are 5 colors in magic, and at the top you have white, and then going clockwise, it goes white, blue, black, red, green. And it's this idea that each color kind of has its role, but also each color has 2 allies. The 2 colors adjacent to it are its allies. The 2 colors that are opposite are its enemies. And so this is a shard set, because we had a set called Shards of Alara, where basically there were groups of 3. So you had the main color, and then its 2 allies were considered a shard. Here they're considered a family. And there's this, one of the families are these vampiric lawyers. Basically, it's a vampiric law firm. You have the Riveters, who are like just the builders of New Capenna. And then you've got so there's Obscura. They're all really cool. It's a really cool theme. They pull off this sort of not quite modern, because it's 1920s, but like the integration of that with the magic fantastical theme. Like, it's super cool. It's been a super fun set. I've drafted a ton of it. What's a little bit sad, usually when they kind of do these 3 color sets, where they focus on like I said, the families or the shards, usually the draft format is a slower format. So you can play like bigger, stupider, more expensive cards in the draft, but it's actually a surprisingly fast and aggressive format, kind of dominated by, we call them 2-drops, things that cost 2 mana. And that's a little unfortunate for a 3-color set. Also, the families are not balanced. One of them is clearly better. The brokers, they're the banking family, I think. They're clearly better than the rest. And then the Riveteers are clearly bad. Like, they're clearly the worst. And it's actually one of the least balanced sets in terms of that's been out in a while. Like the last set, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which was they went to a plane, Kamigawa, which was like Japanese inspired plane, and then they that was like a decade ago, and then they came back thousands of years in its future, and it was this sort of cyberpunk and fantasy mixed together. Super cool set, really good drafting environment, really balanced, really awesome. This one I'm enjoying, but you have to sort of force picking the Brokers Ascendancy, or Brokers family. So I'm enjoying it. It's a little but it's fun. It's a fun, really thematic, really beautiful art. The set's amazing, just not balanced.
Sean, as someone who last engaged with Magic the Gathering as a story back during the Urza's saga, whatever those books were, kind of in that range, it feels like they've lost the plot. I'm sure that's not, I'm exaggerating, but it feels very, very different from what I knew the Magic world to be.
Yeah, so back then, Planeswalker, so Urza was a Planeswalker, and Urza, I mean, I don't know if he was the first Planeswalker, but he was a Planeswalker. Back then, the Planeswalkers had these like godlike powers. And then there was some event that happened where they're just like, we can't have these Planeswalkers be this powerful. And so they made them a lot less powerful. I want to say like the Sundering or something. And so now there's a lot more Planeswalkers, and they're able to walk the planes. They're able to travel from one universe to another, but they're not nearly as powerful. But they do have that ability. Now there is going to be a set coming out later this year, I think. It's called The Brothers' War, which is a reference to Urza and his brother Mishra. So it's going to focus on that. Additionally, 2 years ago, there was a set called it was Return. What was it? Return to Dominaria, which is the continent on the original Magic plane where Urza was, where the Brothers' War took place, and it was that thousands of years in the future, just what's happened ever since the Brothers' War, because it was the Brothers' War, which then led to Fallen Empires, and that led to the Ice Age, and which were all Magic sets. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit. Although there's one big bad, Nicol Bolas, who was one of the Elder Dragons. He's still around. I don't know if you ever encountered him in any of your reading, but it's
been a long time.
He came out in the Legends set, which was the third expansion, right? Yeah, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends. He and the other Elder Dragons, and then we revisited, and then he's been like one of the big main villains in the story for a decade or more.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right. Sean, I was going to talk about two apps, and I will talk about two. One very briefly, though. There's an app called Avowal, which is basically... Sean, have you ever played Wordsy? Did you ever play that game by Gil Hova, Formal Ferret Games?
Yeah.
Wordsy?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Raquel Murai and I really enjoy that. We've played that multiple times.
It is a tricky word game where you get incentivized to come up with as long of words as you possibly can that include as many letters as you can. There's usually 8 letters out on the table. Some are worth 5, some are worth 4, some are worth 3, some are worth 2. And then individual hard-to-use letters have extra bonus points. So this is an app implementation of it, which has a daily challenge. There are not a ton of folks playing it because I end up in the top 20 with a just not very good score. But if you like word games, I'd give that one a look. The big one I want to talk about, Sean, is one I heard about from Duke Suzanne Sheldon, a game called Square Valley. Have you heard of this game, Sean?
I have not, no.
It is the best $2 I've spent on an app in a long time. Square Valley is a, for lack of a better word, tile placement board game done on a cell phone. So you have a giant valley full of squares, and your job is to just place stuff in it, but place stuff where it will score the most points. So as an example, if I have a spruce grove, that is going to do well if it's touching the river, as many sides of the river as it can, and it'll also score if it's touching other trees. Okay, great, fairly straightforward. Pigs do great as long as they're inside of a pen, and based on how many farms are nearby them. If they're outside of a pen, they're negative 20 points. Well, then you add in layers of cities. Hey, this is a courtyard. This courtyard wants to be not touching the city walls, but wants to be next to this XYZ. I think you get the broad picture. Each level has a different theme or flavor or objective. So there was one that's 2 rival castles. These castles need to be in separately walled areas and need to have a bunch of stuff near them. Or this is the old spirit of the forest and it needs to be protected, so you need to encircle it with a river and have a bunch of other wild trees around it, or it scores big negative points. In addition to placing these things at certain points during the levels, you will also... So I mentioned the river, I mentioned the fence, I mentioned the city walls, roads are a thing. You draw those things onto the map as well at different points in the round. So each turn, you'll place something, but then at certain points of the level, you'll get access to, okay, here's the road. Where do you want to draw the road? Do you want to make it in a loop? Do you want to have it go through the city? Do you want to maybe not use the road because it's getting in the way of you placing other edges like the river? And then later in the level, you might get to place the river, and later in the level, you might get to place the fence. So you have to sort of plan out as you go, knowing that you'll add some definition to, okay, the road goes here, and that's great because it connects to this bakery. Or, oops, this quarry needs either a road or river connection. So I built the road, it's not connected, so I need to make sure the river goes through there. Really deep planning game. Well done, looks gorgeous, very thinky, complex in the best kind of way. I cannot give any higher praise for this. I have not played through, I think there's 45 levels, and you could replay these levels and try and better your score. So it's not just, say, play this level and you're done and you can't replay it. No, they're absolutely replayable. But there's 45 levels, and I think I've played 14 of them, and I love them a lot. Oh, hang on one second, Sean. We got a cuteness break. My baby girl's up. Come here, Ruby. Hi. Oh, I haven't seen you yet today because I've been in bed. Oh, look at you. She's got a big smile.
Maybe Ruby can save us. Has she played any board games this week?
Ruby, have you played any board games this week? Ruby, speaking to the mic.
Ruby, come on. You gotta.
She's just kind of licking the mic shield. That's about all she's doing. She's smiling though. She's very happy about it. She
kind of looks a little 1920s Art Deco. Not Art Deco is the wrong word, but with her little headband. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah, she's very cute, very happy girl. Yeah, we gave a little Ruby update during the review that's coming up here shortly, but she's a very happy girl. She's very happy. Oh, what a smile. Oh, what a smile. All right. We're so far off the rails with this intro section, it's not even funny. Anyway, that's Square Valley. I strongly recommend you download and enjoy. I am so far, and I'm not anywhere near done with it. And for $2, an absolute no-brainer. Great game. Really great game.
I downloaded it.
Good. I think you'll like it a lot, Sean.
If not, I'll send you an invoice for $2.
Oh, okay.
That's how reviews work. You didn't know that?
Oh,
I'm constantly getting an invoice from listeners who are like, nope, we didn't like that game you liked. I needed my $39.99 back, please. Oh, okay, sorry. That's
there you go. Enjoy.
That's the deal. That's how this works, Alex. You didn't know that?
Ay. Well, that's Square Valley. I guess I'll never give a positive review to anything else for fear of you having to pay out more invoices.
Right.
After the break, Sean gets to rest his achy back because Abby and I are jumping in with a review. Catch you then.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, the Broker family, they're basically white, blue, green, which is similar to what the Bant family was, the Bant Shard from Shards of Alara. I never really considered myself to be like a Bant player, but I mean, as far as it being the Broker family, I guess I'm.
Wait, Sean. Breaking news.
What?
Sean, breaking news. I get to have you stop talking about Magic.
No.
Because there's things happening. Fresh into the Duchy newsroom, there's breaking Kickstarter campaign news from Game Toppers.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Wait, do we need to do a new ad?
We need to do a new ad. It's a miracle, Sean.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Wait. What's going on? What's going on?
Well, Sean, you know how we've been talking about the late pledge for Game Toppers 3.0.
I do know that.
Yeah, in fact, my dad let me know that we've been talking about it way too much. Sean, 3.5.
Oh,
3.5.
my goodness.
The day after this episode drops, this specific episode, there is a Kickstarter campaign that's going to be live. Game Toppers 3.5. Sean, what is going on with this one?
Well, Alex, I know nothing about it except for these things that I'm about to tell you.
Right.
Because I haven't learned about it, again, except somehow I know these things.
Yes.
So this is going to be a really short campaign, 17 days. It's going to end on May 27th. So definitely get in there. So if you are like brand new to Game Toppers, you can jump in here. You can get your own Game Topper that turns any table basically into a fantastic upgraded gaming table. Really high quality components, or not components, but high quality manufacturing, really sturdy. Almost all of my game playing is on a Game Topper over at Empire Board Game Library. And there's going to be some new stuff. So if you are already part of the Game Topper family, they have new legs for the Mycroft and one of the other tables as well. There's going to be a giveaway. We're going to have links in the show description below, so check that out. New game mats, beautiful new game mats with art by Vincent Dutray, fantastic board game artists. Lots of new stuff. If you want accessories, this thing's got accessories. It's got things like dice towers, poker chip holders. There's just a lot going on here. So whether you need some add-ons for a table you already have, or you want to pick up a new Game Topper yourself or accessories, there's plenty of stuff. And the big thing, Alex, man, how do I know all this stuff? The big thing is that this is going to be super fast fulfillment. The plan, and of course, this is not a guarantee, but the plan, and it's looking good, is August of this year. So super fast fulfillment. You can't beat that.
Sean, would you describe this as a showstopper?
I wouldn't, but you might, Alex.
Well, if it wasn't a showstopper, it definitely wasn't a game topper. But I think there's a chance this 3.5 would be considered a showstopper, therefore, game topper. Check it out. It's live on Kickstarter, probably now if you're listening to this, not on Monday, of the day this episode drops. All right, Sean. We did it. Now back to our regularly scheduled you talking about Magic.
Okay, so yeah, I always felt like I was more of an Esper player, which is now Obscura. So that's the white, blue, black. So really, that's just kind of my color identity, I feel like, in a lot of ways. And so it's just...
In Azul 1, they took you to Azul. In Azul 2, they took you to the stained glass factory. In Azul 3, it was a pavilion, but not just any pavilion, a summer pavilion. Now, coming to theaters soon, Azul 4, Queen's Garden. Abby's in to tell you if this Azul is the best Azul, or if it's a sequel worth forgetting.
Hello.
You're here.
You missed a real opportunity in that intro to be like, in Azul 2, they took you to church.
Oh.
Take me to church. You missed it.
I was about to say, is that an Avicii song? It's not Avicii.
No, it's... What is his name?
Churches or something?
No, it's not Churches. It's Hosier.
Hosier?
Hosiery.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Hosier.
Okay.
Hosier.
Wow. So we have a kid, we're 6 months in, and now we're super old.
Yeah, I recommended that we review Sophie the Giraffe. That got shot down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well,
We've had the most plays of that recently.
Yes. The best reviewer for that is currently Schnoozin. I just had to shut off her laptop. She has a little baby laptop that was just like a ghost activated it somehow, and it was just making noise. Didn't bother Ruby at all, but yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, we've entered the phase of noise toys, so it's all downhill from here.
Yeah. All right. Let's dig into this review. I'm going to give a quick rules overview, unless I will give the option because in previous times you've wanted to give a rules overview.
Yeah, no, not this one. It's a little more complicated than I feel like I could clearly explain, so I'll leave it to you.
I think you do just fine, but I will dive in. So in Azul Queen's Garden, you are trying to build the best garden with an assortment of all sorts of delightful things in 6 different shades of color and 6 different types of tiles. There's the tree, worth 1, the bird, worth 2. There are the butterflies, worth 3 points. There are the flower petals, those are worth 4. You have the kind of sprigs, I don't know what to call that, but kind of like a 5-pointed spriggy flower, that's 5. And then you have the 6 something, but it's a 6-point thing. Anyway, you have those in the very diverse array of colors of light green, light purple, dark purple, and then light blue and yellow. Not light blue and dark blue, luckily enough. So those are the general tiles. Your objective is to have the most points by the end of this game. You're going to earn points through end-of-round scoring. Basically, each round, 4 different things will score you points in between. 3 that are ever-changing between rounds, and a 4th one that always scores. You are going to also score for groups of at least 3 of the same color and 3 of the same shape, at least 3 up to 6. So that's what you're going to score for. How this one will play is each round you will start with a stack of these garden extension tiles, which are face down. And then you're going to deal out 4 tiles from the bag. Again, these are going to be a mix of some kind of color and some kind of shape. So it could be a light blue butterfly and then 3 other kinds of tiles. On your turn, you are going to draft either all of one color, ignoring duplicates, or all of one shape, again, ignoring duplicates. As the round goes on, when a tile is completely cleared, so basically, when you draft off of the kind of top tile in the stack, which has 4 on top of it, that slides off, 4 new tiles come from the bag, and the remaining tiles sit on top of the face-down garden extension. Whenever that gets cleared through the drafting process, that tile then becomes available and is also part of that same rule, all of one color, all of one shape. If you don't have space on your little storage board to grab all those tiles, you can't do the move. So you got to make sure you have room. There's some planning. There's some logistics to it. So that's one thing you can do on your turn is take tiles. The other thing you can do is play tiles. And you would pay the cost of the tile. Similar to Summer Pavilion, a tile counts towards its own payment. So if that sounds familiar to you, that's part of this game. So for instance, a tree is worth 1 and also costs 1. So a tree can pay for itself. You can basically play a tree onto your board. But the 6 petal costs you 6. And that can be a mix of, not a mix, it can either be all of the same shape, but different shapes. And we'll get to the distinction there in a moment. Or all of the same color, but not that same shape. So again, in that case of, say, a 6 dark green, I could pay for it with the other 5 dark green shapes, or I could pay with it with those same 6 ones, but backed by 5 others of that same shape. You can supplement all of these with jokers. You can earn jokers. You start the game off with some jokers, which basically act as wild tiles. You can also earn them by surrounding things on your board. That's a way you can earn jokers. You can never draft duplicates. You can never pay with duplicates, and you can never have duplicates of a tile within the same group. A key rule, The other thing you can do on your turn is you can pass. When you pass, if you're the first person to do so, you'll take the first player marker, lose a point. You can also, and this isn't in the version of the rulebook we have, but it is in the updated rulebook, you can also discard tiles at that time, paying negative points, basically, for every one of those tiles you discard. Those are the majority of the rules. I can't think of anything important I'm missing, Abby.
I don't think so. Scoring, is that a separate section?
Yeah, I mean, effectively at the end of the game, as mentioned, each group of 3 was going to score. So let's say I have a group of dark green. That's going to score for everything in that group. So let's say I had the 6, the 4, the 2, and the 1. That would score 6 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1. That would score you a cool 13 points. Depending on which side of the bonus board you're using, that will either get you some amount of bonus points or nothing. On one side of the bonus board, basically you need a group of 6, and that would get you a 6-point bonus. On the other side, a 6-thing group would get you a bonus of 7, and even a group of 4 would get you something. So you're going to kind of score in order all of the different colors and all of the different shapes. Once you've done that, that's the end of the game.
Mid-round scoring.
And there's also mid-round scoring. Yeah, and I think I briefly touched on this, but basically, and this will change again depending on which side of the board you're using, the main board. This will either be, you're going to score, say, 1 point for every dark green on your board, plus 6 points for every one of the 6 patterns you've built to that point. And then, say, 1 point for every yellow. That's not the exact thing, but that's basically what it is. That will change every round. You play this game over 4 rounds. You'll also score 1 for every garden extension. They have pavilions on them. Those will also score you a point every time you do mid-round scoring. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Abby, give me your first impressions of this game. You are a lover of this series of games. There hasn't been one you've hated at the very least, and I think actively enjoyed in a lot of cases. Summer Pavilion's been a favorite. So, what were your first impressions of this game before we even had it, really?
So my first impression of the game was the box sitting on our table. You had pulled down all of the Azul games. You had just recently ordered Stained Glass of Sintra. That's what it is?
Stained Glass of Sintra. Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah. So we didn't own that game up until a couple weeks ago. And so we kind of had all the boards laying out. And I was looking at the new Queen's Garden board, and the logo for the company
next move games. Yeah.
Just like a sore thumb, because this box is really sort of muted tones, more pastel tones, and their logo is really bold, and it blends in on the classic Azul game, and it blends in on Stained Glass of Sintra, and the colors match the Summer Pavilion box decently. But that was the first thing I noticed. I was like, ooh, that logo. Like, it really stood out to me. And then when I first saw it on the table, it was a bit like, you really couldn't come up with any other colors. You had to go light purple, dark purple,
You're getting into the critique before we even get going here.
Well, those were my first thoughts. But then it was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Calico, which is a game I really do like a lot. And I also really loved that the tiles, the patterns were on both sides of them.
We're way ahead of you're diving into the component critique, man.
Sir, I don't. Could someone? You all have a screen here. You can definitely see what we're doing. There's no list. He has not provided me the order of operations happening here. And spoiler alert: I don't actually listen to this podcast, so I don't know what order we're supposed to do things in. You asked me what my opinion was when I saw it on the table, and I'm giving you my opinion.
General impressions, rules, art and components, gameplay, theme, thoughts from the guild, final score.
Okay, but we already went with rules, then general impressions.
To be clear.
All right, you're already wrong.
The rules, how the rule book is and how easy the game was to understand. That's what the rules critique part of it is, not the overview.
All right, well, my general impression was, there you go. Next.
Were you excited that there was a fourth Azul?
I don't know. I've never been like excited for a game besides, I think, some exit games.
Okay.
So was I like disappointed that there was a new Azul? Absolutely not. But I was like, oh, cool.
I was reasonably excited because I know this is the kind of game where if I pull something that says Azul off the shelf, the odds are pretty good you're going to like it and enjoy it, and I enjoy the games as well, so it's a nice overlap in our gaming tastes. And Summer Pavilion has become a staple. I mean, I don't know if it might be in my actual top 10. It's a very, very, very good game. And the series as a whole just hasn't really disappointed. So I had high hopes for this one coming in. Rules. Abby, I taught you this one the first time around. You learned it from me. Did you find this game easy to learn and understand?
Yes. I will say the first time we played it, we did play it incorrectly.
Yep.
When it came to the duplicates.
And I'll get to that.
The duplicates was a little bit the first go round, but once we got clarification on the rule and we understood it, it was easier and it clicks.
So and look, it's not unusual for a game to have some kind of errata or need to update the rules, especially if you buy an early edition of the game. But I'll put it this way. There is a very key, like, this should have been spelled out in some kind of visual example and should have been way more clearly written in the rules. The rule of the game as a whole, and it's easy to remember, is you cannot use duplicates at the same time. You cannot draft them at the same time. You cannot use them as part of payment. And you cannot have them in the same group on the board. You can have them in different groups, but they can't be in the same group. So you basically just can't use them at the same time. But the confusion came about with, I talked about this idea of you can pay with the same pattern but different colors, or same color but different patterns. Well, the way it's written, it says the same pattern but of different colors than the tile or garden expansion you want to place. Well, if I'm playing a blue butterfly, can I pay for that with 2 purple butterflies? After all, those are the same pattern and of different colors than the garden expansion I wanted to place. The answer, and they've clarified this in an updated rulebook, not even that perfectly, but it's noted, is no, you can't use duplicates in any form. Like, it's not just I can't pay with blue and then use a blue to pay for it. I can't use a pair of duplicates to pay for it. So yes, we had that rule wrong the first game. I would say, having played in subsequent games, it's not a huge deal, other than it increases the odds you'll get stuck with something negative at the end of the game.
Yep.
So, and it makes you more cautious about even grabbing duplicates in the first place. Look, there's ways around it. You can, use this one to pay for tiles of a purple kind, and use this one to pay for, say, other things. But there's ways around it. But that section wasn't clearly written, and then the additional things you can do with a pass action. The rulebook as it is, you could draft yourself into a position where you can't do anything. You've locked up. You've gotten all the tiles you can. Your board's filled, but you can't legally play them. That's not great. So broadly, not a terrible rulebook, and I did mostly learn this from the rulebook. I had some help from Dan King, the Game Boy Geek, and a couple of other sources. I would say of the Azuls, this one is in some ways the most complicated Azul. And maybe we can talk about a little bit about how that feels in gameplay. So, rulebook, some issues. If you're going to play this one, remember the duplicates. It's a key rule, and there are going to be gamers who will try and work their way around it. You can't. Don't use duplicates when you pay for stuff. Period. Okay. Art and components. You talked about a lot of your thoughts on this. Kind of muted colors, some similar things with the dark purple, light purple, dark green, light green. Look, I'm sure they had their reasons. Next Move / Plan B is a decent publisher. I don't know about that. How did you feel about the rest of the production of this game?
Yeah, I like it. It feels nice. It reminds me very much of Summer Pavilion. Like the insert, excuse me, is the best insert of any Azul game. The insert is really, really nice on this one, but like the boards, like this one could use an expansion that comes with the plastic covers, but the tiles are a little bit heftier, that they kind of seem to stay together a little bit better than they do on Summer Pavilion. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's bad manufacturing. The colors is the biggest beef for me, especially when you get to on those garden expansion tiles. There is a printed tile on those, and like going, is this dark purple or light purple? When the
Yes.
first ones pop up is a little bit like, wait, what color is this? That was probably the biggest beef I have, but like the tiles are really nice. The design is printed on both sides. Again, it comes with a really nice bag and a nice tower to put them in when you're discarding. So generally the components are nice. Azul always does it weird though. Like the player markers are always like black, white, beige, and brown, and you're like, you can come up with any color. So
Yeah, and that's true of any Azul game, and I'm not quite sure why they've done it that way. I will say this. I think this is a really positive. I always love when a component design helps you intuit and understand the rules. And they have this really clearly with it's a lone tree, so that tree's worth 1. It's 2 wings on this bird, so that's worth 2. There's 3 butterflies on this, so it's worth 3. They've kind of done this nice subtle baking in of the mechanics and how the tile works with the game, and I think that's pretty cool. I will say the player boards and the game boards themselves are a little on the thin side. And yeah, they just don't have that substantive feel. To be clear, this is true in a lot of Azul games. This isn't a new thing. I'll also note that they don't have, say, the track markers where you know easily something could get bumped as you're moving something, and there's no way to audit check. You just have to do your best not to bump something off the track. You're not moving the score marker that often. There's kind of designated times where you do that in between rounds when someone passes, end of the game. It's not like it's not like Summer Pavilion where there's a constant moving of the score track.
yep.
So to me, it's less of an issue in this one.
Yeah, the scoreboard certainly felt like it didn't need to be. Like with Summer Pavilion, the scoreboard houses the wilds. Like you're going to it, you're touching it, people are around it. This one, it felt very much like this can be off to the side and it's not impacting things very much.
I do want to emphasize your other point. I agree wholeheartedly. This is one of the best inserts I have seen for a game in some time. I mean, absolutely everything has its place, and if you pack it up accordingly, it fits into the box snugly, beautifully. It's one of those things that you get to appreciate the more games you play when there's an insert that really knocks it out of the park. And I mean, absolutely everything has its place. It's easy to pull out and put away. The setup and breakdown time on this is very, very, very manageable for the amount of game you get. And the whole experience of it is really smooth, and I liked that part of this game.
I hate a game where it's just 75 Ziploc baggies. Like, nightmare. 0 baggies involved in this. So,
And not for
definitely
lack of
recommend.
components. You have a
Oh, yeah,
diverse group
no.
of components.
Diverse group of components. It feels like very well manufactured. Alex said he thought the player boards were kind of thin, which they are, but you're putting pieces on top of it, and then you're putting tiles on top of those, and so it gets heftier. It's not slip sliding around.
No.
It doesn't feel like a light breeze is going to blow it off the table. If you were playing in a room with a ceiling fan on, it's not going to be a big deal.
No.
There's enough stuff sitting on top of them that I didn't find it bothersome. To me, the biggest issue with these kind of tile games is the tiles kind of slip sliding around, and this one, while there is some of it, didn't feel overwhelmingly difficult to deal with.
And what they did with these boards, which they do in other Azul games as well, is great rules reminders and refreshers on how much something scores, when this group scores, what scores in a round, things like that. I will note, and I don't know if this is a function of design or not, but there were things that we routinely forgot to do, and we each forgot to do it. So I would routinely forget to do what?
Score the pavilions at the end of in between each round.
So there's a dial that moves for each of the 4 rounds. Think of it sort of like 4 seasons. They aren't really displaying it that way, but you could think of it that way. The dial will indicate which 3 things are scoring, but printed onto the dial is pavilions always score 1 point per. And I consistently, until our last game of this, did not get that in my brain. It just didn't stick. Your thing was when you surround something on the board, you're supposed to get, depending on what you've surrounded, a certain number of joker tiles. Could be 1, 2, or 3. And didn't happen in the third game, but in the first 2, you would routinely forget to get the jokers you're supposed to.
Because you surround it with a tile, but a lot of times one of those tiles is a tile quotes around it where it's printed onto the cardboard, so it is a lower level than the actual thick physical tiles that you've drafted. And my brain just was like, did not see that as a completed circle ever.
To explain that a little bit, you play the garden extensions, which have the pavilions on them, much the same way you play tiles themselves. And in doing so, it's printed on there, which is a nice, efficient bit of components because you can use that to pay for other tiles, or you can use other tiles to pay for those. But you're right, it's on a different level, and so it's very possible you'll have 5 raised things and 1 thing and it doesn't look like it's complete unless you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, there's something printed there. It's a complete circle. I never had that problem. It hit your brain hard for whatever reason.
Yep.
One thing that didn't hit your brain hard, moving on to gameplay, is how to be very good at this game. We played 3 games of this. You absolutely whooped me the first game. The second game, I got you by 2 points. 2 points, and we're talking like 124 to 122 or something like that. And then our most recent one, which we just played just prior to recording this, you whooped me again. And I tried some diverse strategies, but I think even if I hadn't tried those, you just built efficiently. This seems to click really well in your brain.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you why or how this one seems to work really well. I find there's a bit more flexibility in this as opposed to, I keep going back to Summer Pavilion, but that's just because that's the one we play so regularly. Where Summer Pavilion, if you start building a shape, like you're sort of committed to that one. And this one, it's like, oh, I'm doing a group. Well, the thing didn't come up. I'm going to start doing a color. Oh, I'm going to do a different group. Oh, there's a bunch of trees. Like it allows for thinking on the fly, and that just works with my brain.
And so what I think's interesting about this is the draft is different. In literally every other Azul game, it's here are these lily pads, certain amount based on player count, and those lily pads will start off loaded with tiles. You know which tiles are available, the full set of things at the beginning of the round. And so there's some amount of at least in-round strategy you can do, right? There's the long-term strategy of the game. What am I trying to complete? In the first Azul, what rows and columns am I trying to fill in? In the second one, which panes am I trying to complete? In the third one, which groups am I going after? What colors do I need to enable those groups? Are there wilds that I can kind of get? But all that information is out there and known. Things will change based on decisions people make. But new tiles really won't come out other than, say, someone grabbing wilds and them getting replaced. This game is very different because your options are constantly changing in the middle of a round, and you might be able to do a turn or not do a turn based on your own capability and timing, capacity, I should say. Because it starts off with just 4 tiles from the bag and 1 face-down tile, and, well, 5 in total, and you don't know what's on the other side of those. That could affect your strategy. The things that are going to come out after that are going to affect your strategy, and you have the flexibility to take not just by color, but by group. And so it opens up a wide range of possibilities. The restrictions and limitations on the game can make it tricky, right? I have a restriction on storage. You don't really have that in Summer Pavilion. You have, I can't end a round with more than 4, but that's probably not going to happen in the vast majority of cases. The game is the most flexible and easiest, if that makes sense, in terms of not punishing players. This one can punish you. If you get stuck with too many duplicates, or you get stuck with a board that's too full, or you miss out on that one tile you absolutely had to have.
Or the person you're playing with steals it twice.
I mean, it didn't work out for me, but yes. And at the end of the game, you could end up with big negative points. Not the same level that you can get hit with in, say, the first Azul, but the restrictions and the punishment of it requires a certain efficiency, flexibility, and tactical ability to pivot on the fly. As you mentioned, change based on what shows up and what's the best move for me now, with some amount of long-term planning. But again, the flexibility to that garden extension just flipped up, and that's the thing I need, or that's the thing I need to support this, or how can I use this material I have in creative ways? And so it forms this really interesting puzzle. Does this game to you feel like an Azul game? Because it does have that key drafting difference.
It feels like an Azul cousin to me. It feels Azul family. It certainly feels more like maybe it's a sibling of Summer Pavilion, or like a half sibling. But it's certainly, if you played the first Azul and then you went straight to this one, I don't think you would see a lot of similarities.
I would say it's a blend in some ways of the first Azul and the third Azul. And the logic behind that is in the first Azul, you have the different rows have different difficulties to complete, right? The bottom row, I need to have 5 tiles to complete that. The top row, I just need 1. In this one, to put a 6 out onto the board, I need to build up and work for it. It's the same in Summer Pavilion, but this is closer to the first Azul in terms of potential for punishment, potential for losing points more at the end of the game than anywhere else. But I don't know. I get that sort of Azul adjacent, but by the same token, that drafting system of grabbing all of the same and starting off with, it's the same count, right? It's 5 lily pads, it's 5 of these garden extensions face down, but the information just isn't revealed at once. I don't know.
I mean, I think I said this on at least the Stained Glass Central review, perhaps also on the Summer Pavilion review. I don't like that they call all these games Azul. I would much prefer if they said, this was Stained Glass of Sintra, an Azul game. This is Summer Pavilion, an Azul game. But like that they call them Azul, I think puts them in a box where it's like, with this one, you can really see that they have some really good development ideas, some really interesting things. And obviously the person who likes Azul is probably also going to like this type of game. But I think it does a disservice to the game to keep putting the name Azul as the name instead of the edition as the name.
So, do you feel the same way about exit games? Should it be Terror on the Tracks, an exit game, or whatever else?
No, because while the games are like theme-based, the thing you have to solve is not based on the theme, right? The mechanic of every exit game is the same. You're cutting up cards, tearing up cards, digging through a box, doing a challenge, solving a puzzle. You're always doing the same sort of mechanics, and they know that you're doing the same things, so they add new challenges in so people don't like figure them out. but it's the same mechanics ish. That's the only word I can think of. Whereas like these have very different rules and very different strategies and right, like I almost always lose Summer Pavilion. Always. I don't know if I've ever beat you in that game.
You have.
Maybe once or twice. But I almost always lose. And so I think to put the same name on it puts this like, oh, I always lose that game. Like, instead of going, oh, it's an Azul game, it's going to be a tile-based puzzle game.
I think there are some things tying enough things, and I guess this is basically theme. I would say for a typical discussion of theme, we talk about, does the theme of this, it being a Queen's Garden, add anything? Azul is, if I had to describe it as a type of game, right, mostly abstract, lightly themed, entry level, uses drafting and tile placement. Those are the kind of broad characteristics I would use to describe an Azul game. The tiles are sort of something that tie them together. And the designers obviously tie it together. Those are the things that to me strike me as an Azul game. And I think the things I just listed apply to all of them effectively. And I think it applies to this one in spades. I think it would be silly of them to do it differently, because by calling it Azul whatever, it made me that much more likely to buy it. I'd have a hard time finding Queen's Garden an Azul game.
But like, why would you have a hard time finding it? If you just said an Azul game, like you go, oh, it's like an exit game. The exit games aren't branded an exit game. They're all, the box is branded Terror on the Tracks, and then it just has this little logo that's like exit game, and you're like, oh, I know the exit games, like that's what it is. I know the Azul games, but this one's Queen's Pavilion, Queen's Garden, or whatever.
I have nothing to back this opinion up. It is pure opinion. But in my mind, when I hear this a whatever game, I know there are games that are in the same line or in the same series, but are done by a different designer, done by someone else, and often aren't to the same level of quality. Sometimes they are, but often aren't. And I think because this is Michael Kiesling, same designer, same general spirit of the game, and some of the same common factors to it, to me it makes sense to call it an Azul thing. Just me.
But like, isn't that a choice of the designer and the publisher if they want to allow other people into the IP?
Absolutely.
So that's just
more the publisher than the designer.
Yeah.
In most cases.
I mean, so like, who's to stop? What is it? Next
Move.
Next Move Games from going, this is Azul backyard. I don't know. And it's like, or like whatever, they partner with like, this is Azul Barney, and it's a kid's version, like.
By the way, I would love to see an Azul Junior.
Yeah, but like, right, Azul Junior, like that takes the original Azul and it makes a kid's version. But like Azul Junior Queen's Garden, Azul Junior Summer like they're their own thing. It's its own game. Like if you told me, do you want to play Azul?
Mm-hmm.
I would go to the first one.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a mistake. But in any case, all right. Theme discussion done. There was one guild thought. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I played Queen's Garden at BGG-Con with the Board Boys podcast crew. Cam picked it up right away, but I really, really, really struggled with how amped up the puzzles were in that game. Each move seemed to affect every other play. It felt like Azul had gone to college and triple majored in physics, anatomy, and computational analysis, and tried to graduate in 3 years. That being said, we hammered through dozens of games a day at BGG-Con, so it might have been my fried brain. I'd definitely play it again, but not sure that I need to own anything more than Base Azul and Summer Pavilion at this point. Abby, where did this stack on the difficulty scale? Was it, as he described, Azul on quantum physics, or more Azul, slightly spicier?
I would say it's spicy Azul, but to be fair, like this is the kind of stuff I enjoy, right? Like, these are the kind of puzzles I like. Obviously, a jigsaw puzzle is not the same at all, but like my brain likes that, like staring at a large swath of information and finding where it all goes together. Like, that is a thing I like and enjoy doing, and my brain works well that way. If you are not that kind of brain person, I can definitely feel like this would be a big step up in terms of difficulty.
This is not, I think you said this earlier in the review, and I agree. This is not the first Azul I would teach someone. I'd say Azul 1 or Summer Pavilion, probably Summer Pavilion first, if in all honesty. But I wouldn't say this is so much more advanced. I'd be curious. I'm not going to look it up because I just have my phone here, but I'd be curious where the weight rating on BGG settles on this game, whether it's like a quarter point higher or a half point higher. I would say this one and Sintra are pretty comparably complex, but this one might be just because of the nature of the puzzle. You compared it, I think, aptly to Calico. It's a complicated puzzle, and it burns your brain at times. Other Azul games can do that too, but this had that little special extra element. And based on the markers they provide you with, which indicate they expect you might go past 180 or 240 points, it's clear we could both maybe get a lot better at this game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the game, it switches between color groups and shape groups and pattern groups, and adding, like, in this last round we played, I had all 6 additions onto my board. Alex had, 3 empty spaces. Like, we just had huge, completely different strategies. And yeah, I think there's probably a lot more to learn and to glean from the game.
Yeah, and not the worst thing in the world. All right. We have reached the end of the review. Final thoughts. Abby, so I'll briefly explain. The Dukes of Dice have a scale that goes from 1 to 6, 1 being bad, bad, very bad, 6 being good, good, very good. Abby, you have your own scale that pairs with this, and I think this is a good time to define what that scale is.
Yes, my scale is Alex asks me, do you want to play this game? And I have my answer. We have 1, no. 2, 3, sure. 4, 3, okay. Excuse
there we go.
me. 4, sure. 5, yeah. 6, heck yeah.
So I'm going to get a score from you. So final thoughts on the game, score, and then we were going to try and refresh all of the Azuls and play them straight through, but we have a 6-month-old. It didn't happen. She
had a bad night.
Yeah. The night we were supposed to do that, she had a bad night. There's no doubt about that. So in that spirit, as best you can, how does it compare or rank against other Azuls? So, and knowing that 2 is still a little rusty for both of us.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've played 2. To me, it's my favorite.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. So where does that end up on the Abby score?
It's a 6 for me. It's a heck yeah.
Oh, no, you've adopted our scale. You're in.
I'm one of us. One of us.
One of us.
Yeah, no, it's high marks.
So this one gets a 6. Summer Pavilion would also get a 6 in your book?
Yes.
Would Original Azul get a 6?
No.
More like a
4?
4? That far down?
It's too mean.
It is pretty mean. And then 2, you haven't played it recently enough, so hard to scale it.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's high praise for Abby. So the downsides, if I think of the small amounts of negatives with this game, you have some rules issues, and then you have some color issues. But insert is killer. The game is tactical, interesting, and once you get your mind around it, really, really interesting. And I don't know if it quite tops Summer Pavilion, but it's in the mix. And Summer Pavilion's pretty clearly a 6. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't also be that. So it's an Abby and Alex Boxcars Award winner, Azul Queen's Garden. Maybe this will dip to a 5 on the double take. Maybe a year from now, we've cooled on it a little bit. But recency bias included, This game is a ton of fun. It's a really satisfying puzzle that has some minor flaws, but nothing that holds it back and keeps it from being really a top-tier game, and I think a very worthy Azul game. So there you go. That's our review of Azul Queen's Garden. Abby with a heck yeah /6, and I will give it, again, lower end, but probably pretty clear 6 for me in this time too. Abby, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
In this week's Dukes Double Take, we're looking back to episode 248, A Tough Nut to Sack. And Sean, if you go to the Dukes of Dice YouTube page, this one is labeled under a completely different name, but is uploaded separately.
Oh.
It may not be the case by the time listeners check this out, but in any case, we're talking about Ginkgopolis. Sean, at the time, you gave this, and this was a reprint, new-ish edition of a beloved classic and a grail game for a lot of folks. You gave this one a 5. You said, game is tense, it has shenanigans, it's stressful in the best kind of way. You were very happy with this one. I also gave it a 5. I described it as a very satisfying blend of mechanics and said once it clicks, decisions become tense. I also made a prediction, Sean, that I would have played this again in the year that followed. It's been more than a year because we sort of are doing this double take a little out of order. Sean, I'll start off on my end of this. I have not played this game. I was dead wrong on the prediction. And you, Sean, at the time said that I wasn't going to have played this. And you, sir, were correct. So, yeah, another one for Sean. Sean, have you played this one since?
Yes, Alex, I have played it since, just one time since. It's great. I mean, I really dig this game. It's still in the collection. It's not going anywhere. It is, I mean, tense, shenanigans, stressful in the best way, just like you said. I like when games stress me out, and this game stresses me out, man. Yeah, I like it quite a bit.
So it stays at a 5 for you?
Stays at a 5. Great game. Will rarely turn out a play of it.
I think it's more for me a 4, just because I not only haven't played it, but had kind of forgotten about it as an option. So I think it's more realistically a 4. I'm not going to get rid of it anytime soon. And my guess is it's probably more of a great game than a good game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the lack of real deep theme or what it is, but it just hasn't gotten back to the table since. I will say this, though. Gil did have some thoughts. Adam Dalton says, Gink, as we call it, is such a great game. I played it the year it came out in the play-to-win area at Geekway to the West 3 times. When I didn't win that copy, I immediately ran over to Miniature Market and bought it. Great purchase. Became one of my wife's favorite games of all time. The area control combined with the drafting just works, and adding in the stacking of tiles pushes the gameplay over the top. This one is never going to leave our collection. Ducal scale, 5. And I'll note, Sean, this is actually a timely mention of Geekway to the West, because when this episode releases, it will be Geekway to the West week. Geekway to the West is coming up the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I have not finalized completely what my plans exactly are going to look like. I think I'm going to be there most of the day Friday and some of the day Saturday and maybe some of the day Sunday too. It's not the most... Okay, it's more convenient than, say, having to go to a different city, but it's about 30 minutes away from where I live in St. Louis. It's over in St. Charles, and so it's not the most convenient. So combine that with Ruby and other stuff. It certainly won't be the game all night fest that Geekway can be, but I do intend to be there. So if you're a Duke's listener, hit me up on Twitter or somewhere else, say hi, and hopefully our paths can cross. So anyway, Adam Dalton gives Gink a 5.
Cool. And then Francois Malie says, Ginkgopolis is still an amazing card drafting, combo building, area control game. Will never leave the collection. The only downside is the absence of theme, but that is a minor quibble, a solid 5. And Francois, what are you talking about? It's dripping with ginkgo biloba tree future architect city planning theme. Come on, man. So much theme there. I give it a 7 out of 6 for theme.
No, not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much. Yeah. And the consistency in the guild, it's a grail game for many. Stays at a 5 for you, Sean. Dips to a 4, but more just from lack of enthusiasm and looking to get it back to the table. And even, quite frankly, in some of these cases, I'll remember a game well mechanically. I don't remember this game perfectly mechanically a year later.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, more of a 4, but probably if I got a play or two of it again, it could very easily rise back up into that 5 range. Very solid game.
I could play it right now with just a very 30-second look at the rule book and good to go. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good indication of it's not an official criteria, but I think a double take 5 probably has to have at least that to it.
Right.
If you've forgotten the game, that's not great.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, that's going to do it for this unusual recording of the Dukes of Dice.
Well, not quite. Not quite, Alex.
Not quite. We've got, some unfinished. My bad. The best of the rest of the names we did not pick, but perhaps should have. First up, Joshua Acosta with Quarto Biloba. Quarto referencing the 4th Azul game that Abby and I reviewed, and Biloba referencing Ginkgo Biloba. Not the last Biloba reference you'll hear.
Well, yeah, but the Quarto is replacing the Ginkgo portion of Ginkgo Biloba. Okay. And then Seaver Work, the name father, suggested Family Tree. Family Tree, because there's the Ginkgo Biloba tree in Ginkgopolis. And since I haven't listened to the review yet, what is the tie-in there with Azul, the Queen's Gambit?
Queen's Gambit?
No, I know. I did that on purpose that time.
No, it's that Abby had jumped in for the review, and trees are involved in Queen's Garden, so it does fit on several levels. Very good. Nice job, Steve. Jeremiah Brammer suggested Alice in Treeland, and I'm trying to remember Alice in Wonderland involves the Queen of Hearts Garden. And then you have Treeland, Ginkgopolis. Very clever. Bunch of connections there. So nice job, Jeremiah. I feel bad in some cases when you have a name that clever in a week where we've just decided to go down the so dumb it works route.
Oh, anyway. Poor BJ.
No, it's successful. Anyway.
And then Baker Mitchell, which this one I'm like, okay, yeah. Placement Academy 4, Biloba on Patrol, which is a reference to Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. Did you watch the Police Academy movies growing up, Alex?
I have not seen a single one.
I watched them a bunch. Really inappropriate, especially the first one for how old I was when I watched that one. I've seen Police Academy 4 since Citizens on Patrol numerous times. In fact, I think given my age, I think 3 and 4 were the ones I probably watched the most. I actually just watched a really interesting YouTube video on what happened to Steve Guttenberg. He's still acting, but it's all direct-to-video stuff, and because he was one of the biggest stars of the late 80s and early 90s, and then just not so much.
Interesting.
Do you know this? I know you're not a big Simpsons fan. Do you know the Stonecutters song?
No.
Where Secret Society, it's like the Illuminati or the Masons, and they have this line about how they make Steve Guttenberg a star. Anyway, Baker Mitchell, okay. I appreciated the title. It's a good chuckle. It has 0 resonance for Alex, apparently.
Yep, sorry. Last up, Francois Mailly suggested Sycamore City, which I don't know if this was the intended connection. So Sycamore City, right? You have Ginkgopolis, you have Sycamores. There's some good ties in there. But to me, there was a point, and I don't know if I'd call this my favorite song, but it's certainly a top 10 song of all time for me. Guns N' Roses' Paradise City, which normally at this time I would attempt to sing, but based on my general position and the rib pain, I'm not going to do that. But just know I appreciate anything that somehow works in or appears to potentially be Guns N' Roses' Paradise City as a title. I believe I've sung that song before on a long ago episode as a title suggestion. So I appreciate it, Francois. But ultimately, you were all bested by BJ with his very silly one-word title.
Yes, indeed. Well, all right. Thank you, Guild. Appreciate it as always. But that is going to do it now. Now, Alex, now the time is right. So until I should say, man, see, one screw up leads to another screw up. This has been episode 274. Delayed reaction. Jeez. This has been episode 274. Thanks again to BJ for the title Barkitect. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 7th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesofDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.